Hey, what's up, AP guys? We have the era of good feelings for you today. A quick review of post-war of 1812 until the Jacksonian era. So let's get started. Let's do an intro to the era of good feelings and figure out what it is. Well, it's a time of increased nationalism and where there's only one political party, and that is the Democratic Republicans. As we'll see, the Federalist Party will cease to exist during this time. And it was a term that was coined by a Boston newspaper in 1817 during a national tour by then President James Monroe, the fifth president of the United States and the fourth one to come from Virginia. So why is there this increased nationalism during this time? Well, there's the end of War of 1812, which just happened a few years earlier, and the Battle of New Orleans, which you can see here. And here's Andrew Jackson, the famous hero of the Battle of New Orleans, who goes on to become president as a result of this. The Americans absolutely destroyed the British in this battle, and it led to a huge increase in nationalism during this time. Also, we had the end of the Federalist Party because of the Hartford Convention, in which several Federalists urged secession if they didn't get what they wanted, which included amending the Constitution and receiving economic compensation for their losses during the War of 1812. And it made them look, in the eyes of many Americans, like a bunch of spoiled brats because everybody is experiencing nationalism except some of these New England Federalists. And we also have increased economic autonomy, and thanks in large part to Henry Clay's American system. So we really see the United States become economically self-sufficient. Let's talk about Henry Clay and the American system, and there's a young Henry Clay here. There are three parts to the American system. Please know all three parts. The first one is a new Bank of the United States. And the reason why is the 20-year charter on the first Bank of the United States expired, so Henry Clay really encouraged and pushed for the passage of a second bus. It does happen, and it is upheld in the Supreme Court case of McCulloch versus Maryland. He also wanted internal improvements for states, and he wanted this at the expense of the federal government. This does not happen, however. He particularly hoped for internal improvements out west. He was from Kentucky and often traveled back and forth between Kentucky and Washington, D.C. when he was senator or secretary of state or a member of the House of Representatives. And what he saw was that many of the roads out west were in need of improvement, and he hoped to improve these by having the federal government pay for that. And keep in mind that never happens. Most improvements during this time were a result of state spending, and an example of this is the Erie Canal. It was funded entirely by New York State, no federal government money whatsoever. Many people in the federal government believed if it only benefited one state, they should not pay for improvements. The federal government should not pay for improvements. That should fall on the states. And the third part of Henry Clay's American system was protective tariffs, and most notably the Tariff of 1816. And he wanted to encourage American industries, encourage people to buy American products. Okay, some troubling signs during the era of good feelings, and a recent DBQ asked the student to determine, was this an appropriate label, the era of good feelings? If you wanted to say that no, it wasn't, you could argue that there was emerging sectionalism. This actually comes later, particularly after the Compromise of 1820, but this does start to happen, and we'll talk about the Compromise of 1820 in just a minute. Tariffs do not benefit the South. The South dislikes tariffs because they're mostly farmers in the South. There is not a lot of industry during this time, and this helps set the stage for a showdown in the late 1820s and the 1830s. We also see the second bus, which is a point of contention for some people, particularly those out west. Those that favored the bus were businesses and people in New England. The Panic of 1819 is one of the first major panics that the U.S. experiences, and this leads to a distrust in the bus because the bus actually forced a lot of wildcat banks out west to foreclose on several farms or to take farms away. So not everybody was happy during the era of good feelings. Really, the biggest issue during the first half of the 19th century is going to be slavery, as we'll see. Okay, let's talk about the Compromise of 1820, which happens during this time. Again, you could argue it is not an era of good feelings due to the Compromise of 1820, or you could argue that it was because it helped at least delay the start of a civil war. There are three parts. One, Missouri would be added as a slave state. Missouri they petitioned to become a state, and they are added as a slave state. Two, Maine is carved from Massachusetts, and that would be added as a free state. So the balance is going to be even between slave and free states, and this is very important so that one side does not get an edge in Congress. And then there's this magical 3630 line that would be used in the future for all states in the Louisiana Territory. Everything above that would be free. Everything below that would be slave. And if we look at this map here, here's the 3630 line, and you'll notice that Missouri, for the most part, except this little teeny tiny notch down there, is above that line, as is Kentucky and Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. But in the future, anything over here above this white area would be free when it is admitted. Anything below would be slave. And the impact of the compromise is this helps lead to increased sectionalism. And Thomas Jefferson, the former president, said when he heard about this, it was like a fire bell in the night. He predicted bad things would happen and that it would permanently pit the North and the South against each other. He was absolutely right on that. Okay, the Monroe Doctrine in the end of the era of good feelings. The Monroe Doctrine was written by Secretary of State John Quincy Adams, and he told Europe to stay out of the Western Hemisphere. And there's Uncle Sam saying, hands off. This leads to a huge increase in nationalism because America is feeling very strong. They're very proud of their military. Keep in mind, again, the Battle of New Orleans is not that far removed. And in return for Europe staying out of the Western Hemisphere, the U.S. would stay out of European affairs. And this really becomes a cornerstone of the U.S. foreign policy for the next 100 years, basically. And what are some reasons why the era comes to an end? Well, we have the election of 1824, which is also known as the corrupt bargain of 1824, and we have the reemergence of two political parties as well. But for a short time in American history under James Monroe's presidency, this is known as the era of good feelings. Okay, I hope that clarified some things for you. If not, please feel free to leave some questions or comments or concerns in the comment section below. If you have not already, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel. Let some people in your class know, friends, anybody you know who is taking AP or could benefit from this video, please let them know. And look at Toby Maguire. He loves the era of good feelings. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a great day and good luck on your tests.